Welcome back to Spitball and Cards. In today's video, we're talking about intangibles. Recently, I asked my personal Instagram audience, what's your baseball card hot take? That video is going to be on my personal channel later this week. But one of the answers was I wanted to talk about with this group was this answer right here. And this was this person's hot take. And I wanted to get your thoughts on it. This question is, Kyle Tucker would be more collectible or more collected if he had a stronger jawline. Obviously, it's a joke. I think this person's kind of serious. Are intangibles a real thing? Do we actually think that Kyle Tucker would be more collected if he had a better jawline? He was bigger. He was stronger. He looks more like Aaron Judge. Would that make a difference? Look at Jordan, right? Jordan, he's pretty collected. He's had some really big moments, of course, and some really great numbers. But is it because he's just a bigger dude than Tucker? What are your thoughts, Phil?
I look at it a couple different ways. I think it's not as simple as like, oh, the player's likable, so I want to buy his cards. That doesn't explain the price gap between Mookie Betts and Bryce Harper in the hobby right now. So I think is this guy admirable in some way or another? Is this somebody who I'd want to be around? Is this somebody who I'd want to model myself after if I was an athlete? And I think that can come in many different shapes and sizes. And I think physical attributes is one of them. Unfortunately, right or wrong. Do you need to be an Abercrombie model? No. Physical attributes, whether it be related to your body or your face or some combination, your height, et cetera, I think those can get you somewhere with regards to, can I have an emotional attachment to this player? So it starts at a base level. Do I want to be a fan of this player? And then do I want to collect this guy's cards? That's how it would relate and translate to card collecting.
Okay. Ty, do you agree with that?
I tend to agree with that. There's, relatability aspects definitely come into play. I just think about hype is what determines a player's value, like at the end of the day. And there's a lot that goes into hype. And if a player looks cool and has charisma and swagger, and I don't know that they need to be like the most strikingly handsome person in the world, but certainly like having an aura, as the kids say these days, like helps. It helps get them into the conversation. It helps get them into, marketing and things around those. Like even somebody like Fernando Tatis Jr. just like had so many marketing deals, sponsorships and things that he was being paid for pre-PEDs. And then even still he's got them, but like he's got that factor. And, so I think those things come into play, and then they just thrust those athletes more into people's consciousness. Think about somebody like Ken Griffey Jr. And if Ken Griffey Jr. didn't, have a great smile and have the backwards hat and everything, and just looked, I don't know, like who you would compare him to, but somebody else that just wasn't particularly exciting looking, it would have been a completely different story. Hard to build the persona of the kid around somebody that just doesn't seem very interesting. And that comes into play with a lot of other players too, who like not baseball, but Tim Duncan's one of the all-time great players in NBA history, but he's boring, kind of a boring personality, boring gameplay. And, it impacts them a lot, I think, their card prices.
Okay, Jeff, what's your take on it?
Yeah, I definitely agree with what the guys have said, that there's an element of charisma that goes into collectability. Swag, as the kids say. Tatis is a great example. And I think Bryce Harper is a great example, too. And that part of it is his physical appearance. He's got great hair. Topps has made some amazing cards of his hair, just like Bo Bichette, known for his hair. And I think that helps their collectability because they are in the spotlight. There is some element of, oh, he looks really cool. I want to play like that. Or it's the same way that some of these guys with their gear, that trickles down to even little league kids needing to wear elbow pads and shin guards like their hero players. So I think that there is an element of truth to that, specifically about how Kyle Tucker looks, maybe. I think part of it goes to what Ty was saying and related to Tim Duncan too, that Tucker's not a very charismatic guy. He's not a very flashy player, even though he's been a top fantasy baseball performer for years. He's never been very collected. And we thought that maybe that'll change if he's in a big market like with the Cubs, although he's had some up and down portions of this season. Will that change if he goes somewhere like New York and becomes in the MVP conversation in a city like New York? Maybe. But I think that to say that looks don't count at all would be foolish.
There's a couple of things I want to bring up, and I got to tread lightly on this. In the WNBA, Sophie Cunningham is popular, and I think it helps that she's pretty. I think it does. She's, online people talk about Sophie Cunningham, and she defended Caitlin Clark. You see that, right? And then in Major League Baseball with Aaron Judge, he's 6'7", big, strong dude. Giancarlo Stanton, same way. They're memorable. I think that the physical appearance does help, right? I don't know. I don't want to take that too far, but I do think it makes a difference. And so Kyle Tucker, I don't think he's an ugly dude, but if he looked more like someone that was playing the lead character in The Natural, I don't think it would hurt him at all. I think it would only help his cards.
Yeah, and I think there's also extremes when it comes to physical attractiveness with regards to male athletes, given that predominantly at this point in 2025, most collectors are male. Let's just, call a spade a spade. So I think when it comes to men, there's like the two extremes, and then it's okay to be somewhere in the middle. I'm not going to call out specific examples. We already called out one in this show before. We've called out plenty of others on both sides of those. But I think, and it's a little bit different, right? The physical attractiveness, it's less about the player being interesting, which I think is the Bryce Harper factor.
Okay.
And you have to be appealing, right? You need to be interesting and appealing. That would help explain why some collectors want cards of Bryce Harper. And they might outnumber those that want the cards of Mookie Betts, despite markets being both pretty large for both. So we don't want to make this all about a Bryce Harper episode. I know there's gonna be a ton of feedback on that already, but just the easy example.
Yeah, I just want to say, and this is we're the baseline, the bottom line for somebody to be collectible is that they have to be good. I mean, there's some really handsome baseball players who have not made it in the collecting world because they haven't been successful Major League Baseball players. So I think that when we're talking about looks or swag or charisma or whatever intangibles there are that add on to a player's collectability, whether it's likability or not, maybe they're hated, but they're known, that has to be in addition to them being successful, because that's what's going to get the most attention if they're successful and continuously in the spotlight.
I agree. Think of Cal Raleigh this year. The nickname, the Big Dumper, is such a good nickname. It makes him memorable. There's something about Cal you remember. Think of Bartolo Colon, Big Sexy. Like, you think of Bartolo Colon as a better baseball player than he probably was. He was a great baseball player. His stats are really good, but you remember his career in a positive light, even though he was a steroid user, right? Some people don't even know he's a steroid user, but he was. And even though he's a really goofy dude, but the point is there has to be something intangible there. And this is either has to be discussed by the media, either has to be just who they are as a goofy person. You got to be careful, though. You don't want the Yasiel Puig effect, where it's the exact opposite, because it can go too far, like a Carlos Gomez. So you got to find like the right middle ground of just a nice guy who's also has a memorable trait. Think of Mike Trout. What's his call to fame? He likes the weather. That doesn't do it for people, right? It's just one of those things that's tough.
I think you're onto something there. I think, and you see this with basketball a little bit, the star players have an identity. They have something that they represent. Michael Jordan, all-time winner, all-time competitor. LeBron James, durability. Bryce Harper, tenacity, clutch gene. As you said, Scott, Mike Trout, nothing. Ken Griffey Jr., charisma. 5 tools potentially as well. I think certain players will have that, like Luka Doncic is probably an underdog, based on where he came from and some of his physical traits. So I think it's important to have an identity. And with Big Dumper, that's what made me think of it. He's different, he's appealing, and he has that unique thing going for him. So
another good example is Tim Lincecum. He's someone I think of the freak. Obviously, he had a great peak, which helps. You have to be good, like you said, Jeff. But what separates the players who had good peaks from other players who had good peaks? Tim Lincecum was 5'9", I think, and he was as good as he was, and he did all those things for the Giants, and he's a Giants favorite. Like, that matters, and that happened because of how he was in the field. So, what were you going to say, Jeff?
I was just going to hop in when Phil mentioned Luka. His part of Luka's narrative has been that he's looked sloppy, that he's been overweight, that he can't stay in shape, that he can't play defense because he's not in shape. And he's trying to change that narrative. And that's been a big offseason storyline for him and the Lakers in the NBA this year. He's lost a lot of weight. He's got in the gym. So he's trying to change that narrative. So that'll be interesting to follow to see if that helps. If changing his physical appearance will translate to his charisma, his collectability on the court. We'll see.
Yeah, I mean, you compare two other NBA players. Jeff and I are both, big fans of Giannis. Compare Giannis Antetokounmpo, literally built, no pun intended, like a Greek god, and then compare him to Nikola Jokic, who just looks like, I don't know, a kind of a troll and just loafs around on the court. Jokic has supplanted Giannis in terms of like most people's attitude in terms of who the best player in the NBA is right now. And he's got the hardware to go with it now too. But like from a popularity perspective, Giannis is still much more popular than Jokic in the hobby and in terms of his card prices and everything. And there's a lot more that goes into that. But I think just like the personality overall too. If Jokic had more of a personality like Dikembe Mutombo or something and was a really fun and like, whatever, he would probably be worth more. And if Giannis was like kind of antisocial and like, let me just go ride my horses in Greece like Jokic is, then like he might not be as popular. But the whole piece adds up to their collective value way more than just their stats or their awards and championships.
Yeah, I just want to add one thing that made me think of looking at this. This isn't a new thing. You look at who's probably the most collected guy in baseball. It's Mickey Mantle. And was he the best player? In some ways, maybe. But overall, for his career, I don't know if he could compete with guys like Willie Mays and Hank Aaron, perhaps. But he had the charisma. He was a ladies' man. He was kind of could relate to the everyday American, going out, having a few drinks. I think his sort of lionized personality is what keeps him as a top collectible option.
Joe Namath, Derek Jeter, David Beckham, Wilt Chamberlain was like a big time ladies' man. Like a lot of these guys, maybe they just sort of play into the prevailing culture of these big city teams. I don't know, but even like there's a pretty strong dichotomy between Cristiano Ronaldo and Lionel Messi. So interesting.
I do think that the fact he was a Yankee is super important.
No, it does. But like then he lived up to the Big Apple culture, if honestly.
Yeah.
Like
Yeah.
Both Jeter and Mantle. And
Absolutely.
So sticking to, talking about basketball a little bit, there's somebody that came to mind who was the opposite of good. Basketball is much more polarizing for these players. It's easy to have polarizing players because basketball, you have so much more ability to dominate in that sport compared to baseball, just off of like a usage percentage. But Kevin Durant, he has the worst reputation, and no one's ever going to really care about Kevin Durant. I know there's going to be bold takes like, well, his cards go for, I understand, but for what he's done in his career, they should be going for more. He should be considered better. But those are the intangibles that matter when card collecting. And I know a lot of people who will get, myself included at times, but like he's kind of like Manny Machado. He's just not likable. And it's hard to invest big dollars in that player because that needs to exist alongside the good play. And whatever reason, it's hard.
Well, I think that part of that intangibility factor, you mentioned it with Mantle. You're right. He played in New York. He won all those championships. That's huge. Being on one team is a huge intangible that helps collecting. And I think Kevin Durant, that's what hurts him the most. He's looked at as kind of a ring chaser, leading Oklahoma City to get to just like near the pinnacle and then jumping ship to a rival team and continuing to chase championships. No one can doubt his ability and him being one of the best scorers in league history. But I think just bouncing from team to team, that loses a lot of his appeal to collectors.
So let's play a game. Want to play a game? Let's go through each player in Major League Baseball, just a few of the superstars, and talk about what we think of when we think of that player. All right? Ohtani. What do you think when you think of Ohtani?
Gambling. Somebody in our comments will say it.
Unicorn. The two-way
unicorn. There's the good thing that you can like nail Ohtani to, aside from the good play on the field. Let's talk about.
I would add professional.
Okay, professional. Like he's Mr. Business a little bit, you know. You guys know the Arrested Development.
Not in that sense. I just meant like a mature professional, like professionalism.
I just wanted to say Mr. Business. Anyways, we can think of also. Let's go to his teammate Mookie Betts. What do you think of?
The smile.
Good bowler.
That's something. I know that's you're being like
He's multifaceted. He's good at a lot of things.
Athlete.
the shortstop aspect, all the Gold Gloves and right, the bowl. I think that matters. Like, oh, he's one of the best pure athletes people always say online.
Multiple championships in
Multiple championships. Okay, how about Mike Trout? Injuries? That's what I think of.
War god.
Tragedy.
That's a good one.
Shakespearean.
Yeah.
Who haven't we spoken about that's a Hall of Fame caliber player? What do you think of when you think of Max Scherzer?
Heterochromia.
2 eye colors, yeah.
But like there's not
Border collie.
Too many teams.
Mercenary.
Yeah. I don't think there's as much there compared to other players. But my point is you can kind of do this game. And does it matter if I don't like Manny Machado as much as Jeff and Chris? No. Like if you like the player, buy the player. But if you're investing, I think it matters more than people think, unfortunately, from outside perspective.
You're right. You have to look at what other people think, especially if you're, like you said, if you're investing, if you're concerned about what their long-term value is, then it doesn't matter as much what you think of the player as what other people are going to think. Because if demand isn't there, their cards are never going to go up. So if you're collecting, great. But if you're in one of those people who like to invest or see their money in cards rise, then you better be prepared to look at what other people think of that player.
Yeah. One thing I'll note is you can be successful really in any player if you buy at the right time and you buy the right cards. Like if you get a top 5 card of a Hall of Fame caliber player, even if he's not like beloved, there's enough collectors to support that. It's when you get more to the fringe stuff, like a PSA 10 Bowman Chrome autograph, that has more risk in my opinion. So anyways.
So I actually have a slide like that I did for a video a while back of some different factors overall that I think go into like a card's value. Nice. So I'll show that real quick. This is kind of what I had highlighted for a video I did previously on the Market Movers channel of like all the different things that go into the value of a card overall at any given time. And I think what we've been talking about is here. You know, I see a lot of people say like stats don't correlate to card prices. Well, yes and no. They do, you know, to a certain extent, but it's not the like be all end all. All of these things factor into it. If you have highlight reel dunks or big, you know, 450-foot home runs or crazy, you know, even crazy outfield plays, or you think about Skeens and the way he pitches, like definitely factors into this in addition to just the fact that he's dominant. It's, you know, if he was a knuckleballer, I don't think, you know, this would not necessarily excite people as much. Guys who are drafted high tend to have a longer leash in terms of their value than guys who aren't. And we talk a lot in baseball about age because the counting stats still matter, you know, just to get to certain numbers before you hang it up. Winning is bigger in some sports than others. But I think you could layer into this winning championships and winning awards. And so there's different dynamics here, right? What do you guys think of this? And is there anything else that comes to mind that's missing from this, you know, other than maybe not having big buck teeth or something?
Yeah, Ty, this is great. And I think what brought up this conversation with Scott is physical appearance or looks. And that could go into this. I mean, that kind of goes along with persona. Yeah. And to your earlier point about a guy like Tatis getting endorsements, looks matter for that as well. Companies are more apt to hire players or athletes that they feel like appeal to a wide range of customers. So there's definitely a physical appearance element to this too. But again, that's got to be layered on top of winning, layered on top of good statistics. So
I think, exposure to that player is important. Seeing Tatis on every single MLB ad on that, I am who I am. I hate that ad. I hate that ad passionately. But I mean, I see it every second. And it was making me kind of chuckle when I was thinking of like, all right, this is the promotion I think of when I think of Mike Trout. And I love Mike Trout. I hate what's happened to him. All I think of is the Super Pretzel ad. Like that is what I think of with Mike Trout. That was like his big promotion from when he was a rookie.
Oh, I've never even seen that.
Oh, you've never seen the Super Pretzel ad?
No.
That's what I think of. But like even for like Ronald Acuna Jr., like let the kids play stuff. That matters. But seeing someone over and over and over kind of forced a little bit on you is going to make a difference.
There's a commercial that I remember. Well, there's 2 commercials I remember from when I was a child that stand out to me the most. And the first is all of the Penny Hardaway, Lil Penny commercials, voiced by Chris Rock. Do you guys remember those?
Yeah.
I don't.
I think you were a little too young, Scott. It was
Little Penny.
Yeah, Lil Penny, but I'll send them some of you afterwards. But I mean, you could argue that Lil Penny became more iconic than Penny Hardaway himself, in spite of the fact that Penny was like one of the probably 3 or 4 most exciting young players early in his career. And then the other one was Allen Iverson had Reebok commercials, and the shoes looked cool, but like he had these insane dribbling moves that my friends and I would just try to like reproduce over and over again in the driveway. And I can still remember like the entire commercial in my mind. And so those things definitely have a very powerful effect in terms of making you want to like collect the player, especially if you're young.
Yeah. So I think it's all interrelated. There's definitely an element of truth in the original statement that was brought up on your hot take.
Yeah, looking at Ty's chart, so the play style that accounts for position, things like that, I assume.
Yeah, you could. Yeah, I think you could throw that in there for sure.
Yeah, somebody like Ellie De La Cruz, like certain guys that show just a flash of upside early on, people like hold on to that, like Yasiel Puig. So even if they weren't like, they didn't come in as like the number 1 overall pick or drafted in the top 10, like I think like that upside potential. And then the other side of that is like longevity risk. So like Paul Skeens right now, a lot of people just expect him to have a major arm injury, and they probably should within the next 2-3 years, maybe even next year. I think with Ohtani, a lot of people just thought he'd get injured after he got injured a few times. So those would be a few other things that could like limit the ceiling potential that might not have been like explicitly called out there. But yeah, I like that list.
Position's a good call out though, like across sports. But I think about something that's always kind of mystified me a little bit in baseball prospecting is like how much people play into the hype of like highly ranked catchers. I mean, we talk about pitchers all the time, but catchers, like Cal Raleigh is like an anomaly this year. And even if you look at his prices, they're actually still very cheap compared to like a player if they were like an outfielder or a shortstop or something, like where they would be right now. If you were to like do a draft of, I don't know, let's say you were doing a draft of the 90s or something, and you were gonna, or the 2000s, or like when fantasy draft style, real life, like all the players go into a pool, and so you're just picking every franchise in snaking order is picking a player. Like, how long does it take before the first catcher gets taken?
Is this from like an investment perspective?
No, I'm just thinking we know like catchers are very valuable. Like a really good catcher is very valuable to his team for a whole bunch of reasons. But still, like even when you look at like how a franchise values them, like think about the best, just the best catchers of all time, even like in my lifetime, like Pudge and Buster Posey, and I'd throw Yachty into the mix, Mike Piazza, like others. I don't like, even it seems like even those like franchises don't value them the same way of like the value that they bring. So then you translate it into the hobby, and it's like, I don't know. It's just it's kind of a position that's sort of dead. I feel like I'm rambling a little bit, but hopefully you guys.
We should make like a war adjustment for baseball card positions, right? Some positional adjustments on predictive value.
Or a divisor.
Because like shortstops, they get a higher bonus based off of the fact they're a shortstop and they have the most balls hit to them in the infield. So they have the most time on the camera, the most opportunities to make a good play versus a center fielder who can make like a Pete Crow Armstrong. That's a big thing for him. Maybe you're onto something a little bit there.
And a catcher. Catcher's wearing the mask. You don't get to see their face. They're kind of like a football player versus the guys in the field.
And a lot of catchers, while they play, they're always playing beat up, which usually hurts and impacts performance, right? So...
Yeah, so something there. This is similar to running backs in football and pitchers in baseball. I think there's been more of an effort to do workload management. So I was just asking AI to spit out some numbers. So in the 2000s, a lot of teams would have workhorse catchers that would go 450 to 500 plate appearances, like the Buster Posies, Joe Mauer, Yadier Molina.
Thank you for saying Joe Mauer, because I was going to say him because somebody will yell at me in the comments, and I love it.
I was thinking that time. I knew something mad about that.
Just saying names, but thank you.
Keep going. Some Twins fan is just like, freaking Teapot sucks.
Yeah. I love Mauer.
Yeah, so now most starting catchers are averaging between 380 to 420 plate appearances. In 2023, I think none No MLB catcher surpassed 510 plate appearances in 2023. JT Realmuto is the example of one of the guys that will go pretty high. Will Smith's another one. But if you're not present a lot, and this is what hurts pitchers, even when they used to go eight innings per start, pitchers will show up every fifth, not day, but game. And I mean, how can you have an emotional attachment to a player that you don't see often, right? It's holding back pitchers, certainly relief pitchers too.
Yeah, and it's holding back catchers from putting up those big season stats. We don't see Carlton Fisk type years because even Will Smith, he just got hurt, but even before that, he was under serious workload management. And as a fantasy owner of his, it was frustrating because he'd get off about every third day, unlike it used to be. So yeah, there's definitely something there.
Yeah. And then you've got, so Cal Raleigh is probably playing a decent amount of DH this year. And other guys will try to do like the first base DH thing, but then WAR is penalizing those plate appearances in a way because you get that negative adjustment for being a DH or low value position like first base, especially relative to catcher, which is the top position, right?
Mm-hmm. I know Cal Raleigh has 42 of his 54 home runs at the catcher position, which is the most all time, but that still is, 20% of his home runs are at DH. Still pretty impressive.
Crazy. I didn't realize that he had that many non-catching home runs.
Yeah, it's tough, man. It's tough. Plus, the hard part about catchers, they're eventually just going to graduate to be a DH like Salvador Perez, which hurts. When you think of catcher, who would you say the best catcher in the hobby is all time? Johnny Bench? That's who I think of.
Yeah.
First base, who do you think of? There's a couple, right? I think of Pujols. I think of Gehrig. Who else could you think of?
I think most people would say Gehrig. I just have a really hard time with
comparing eras.
It's always really tough. I tend to stick to the people I've seen, but I guess I'd go Gehrig and then Pujols.
And then second base is a tough one. You could say Joe Morgan is by far the best second baseman to me all time, but he doesn't get any respect at all. You can go buy his rookie card right now for $25 from 1960. Yeah. I'm gonna get my trouble too. 1962.
That's crazy.
67. I don't know. Either way. Yeah, they're cheap. But then, once you get to shortstop, you got a lot of players. You have Derek Jeter. It really blows up. And the outfield does really well, too. So positional things do matter when you're investing, unfortunately.
Third base is Mike Schmidt. I don't think it's good.
Brooks Robinson's collected, but Mike Schmidt's probably number one. Oh, you have George Brett. George Brett's very collected as a lifetime Royal. That's a good one.
A lot of the recent third basemen, not so much. Even Hall of Fame, like Scott Rowland.
All the Rogers Hornsby fans are yelling at you, Scott, for
Rogers Hornsby. I don't know. I still might take.
Plus Jackie.
Yeah. Well, Jackie. Yeah. Okay. I'm going to get in trouble.
So good friend of
you from the comments.
Good friend of myself.
I'm going to get in trouble. But didn't Jackie play a lot of first base though too?
Good friend of myself and Scott, Mike O, who probably watches this channel on occasion. He's a big Phillies fan, and he used to get triggered when people would say that Nolan Arenado's the GOAT. Greatest third baseman ever. Maybe, at one point a perceived trajectory. This was 2018. So he'd appreciate, Scott, you as a Arenado guy or former Arenado fan, maybe, that you acknowledge that Schmidt is superior. So
absolutely. Arenado did this thing where he fell off a cliff. Schmidt played forever and he was awesome. Yeah. Okay, well, I think we talked around this pretty well. I guess overall is don't just go off of numbers. I will say baseball is the one sport where you can get away with that more than any other sport. You can go off of numbers and still be okay. Numbers don't lie when it comes to baseball, and they matter. But don't neglect, good or bad, the intangibles that can hurt or help you on a player. That's why Ohtani, people are so high on him, is because of those intangibles on top of the play. There's some negatives with Judge right now with the postseason stuff, but he could change that real quick. All of a sudden, Aaron Judge is a real good-looking investment. So there's a lot of things that can impact.
Speaking of Judge, he did get new teeth. He's popular since he got the new teeth.
He did get new teeth. Him and Freddie Freeman.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, dude,
I don't example, by the way. Sorry, keep going, Phil.
I don't think that, and intangibles aren't something that usually change too much over time. Narratives have been created for a guy like Bryce Harper, but the intangibles behind those didn't really change a whole lot. Machado is another one where once you kind of have your way of doing things, your values, your belief system, the way you were raised, that sort of thing doesn't usually change all too often. Of course, that can lead to mistakes being made that could hurt your values, which we've seen. Players go to jail or commit crimes that may have been influenced by those intangibles and those beliefs and those values. But I don't know.
Okay. I think it's a pretty good place to wrap. I will note Jackie Robinson had 748 games at second, 198 at first, 256 at third, 152 in the outfield, and 34 at shortstop. He was like the first
Mookie
position. Yeah. First, what's the word I'm looking for? Utility player. Yeah. Pretty impressive. Jackie Robinson is pretty good at baseball. Yeah. All right. Thanks for watching, everybody. We appreciate it. If you are interested in hearing more content from us, this week we are debating who will have better long-term value, Mike Trout or Aaron Judge, in our Patreon. Go check that out. It's $10 a month. We've been doing these videos since March in the Patreon. And thank you to everybody who's joined. We appreciate you all being a part of it. But we have a big catalog of videos you can go access. Some advice from Phil this last week on optimal buying times and what seasons to look to purchase, other things like that. So check it out. Thanks for being here, and we'll see you in the next video.